Hey guys, morning. It's currently 7:30 right now. Just woke up. Actually trying to be able to record this because our internet's actually back up again because of the whole death thing, the whole death winter thing outside right now, but whatever. So, anyways, my next assignment talk about, was to read the Video Game Theory Reader, Chapter 5 link, which essentially talked about just emotional connection and like why we would play video games the way we do. And so I pulled a couple interesting quotes from the article that I thought was interesting in terms of breaking down the circles and the equations from it that I think were really significant to gameplay. So it can be argued that the magic circle of games leverages the experience to particular aesthetic nature, where practical utilities are submitted to an intrinsic motivation to be entertained. And then another one that says the magic circle produces a shift in the thematic field of the experience, which simultaneously both magnifies the emotional intensity, yet also provides a safety net with the pretend aspect of player behavior it elicits, and its relation to the sense of reality variable. Now, I thought that was very interesting in terms of what it was going for, because the article also, I guess it's not so much an article, it's more of like just it's probably a book. I don't know, it sounds interesting. I might actually read the whole thing once I get a chance, once I get more of a chance. But uh, I like how it used different types of games in its comparison, like specifically comparing certain games. I like how it combined together like shit like it would use something like Shadow of the Colossus, but then also use like Zuma and like another thing, which I mean two completely different games, but they can also elicit an emotional response. Now the variables in the last thing that I mentioned that I thought were really interesting, so I wanted to look at those in terms of like certain aspects of say of the Final Fantasy example that was given, and also go along with the idea of flow. Now, where I think, as I mentioned last time, in terms of flow and platforming, flow in terms of like a platformer is something with getting to the next level, like getting to the next level, seeing like what the next challenge is. Whereas in something like an RPG, as Final Fantasy was given as the example, that is more of like it's more in context of getting to the next point in the story because you're emotionally invested in trying to find out what happens, like in the story. Whereas the emotional investment in terms of platforming, that more comes from trying to get to the next level. Now the variables that were mentioned within that were mentioned within the book are a sense of reality, which is like just kind of the sense of reality, which goes along with the sense of being real and how immersed you are in the game, which again can come from the story. When it feels like when the people that are involved with it, they feel real. They feel like it's not some like you don't feel like you're experiencing fictional characters. Like even though the like say the characters that you're experiencing, you identify with them and you want to see their journey continue and you want to know how it happens because you just 100% care about them. And a good example of that would probably be in terms of Final Fantasy would probably be uh, as an example would be from Final Fantasy VI with Terra. Like, you care about Terra and you want to find out, like, why these things are happening to her, the circumstances of her birth and stuff, which it's pretty it's pretty heavy stuff when it actually does come to light. For those that play, I'm not going to spoil it for those who haven't played it, but next thing in that is the next variable is proximity, or how close one feels psychologically connected with goes on, and the feeling of success or failure. This can probably be interpreted with having impact, like in the success, like you feel like you're making a difference, and that you feel like that in terms of like playing the game, like in at least in your mind of being psychologically connected with it, you feel like your decisions will have weight. In terms of instead of it just being like oh yeah, this is just a game, I can save the world, and I can just whatever, I can just go through, save the world, and it's all good. But it's more about like the whole thing of you want to save the world, you want to you know get to the thing of like do whatever you possibly can to make sure that these characters survive. It's it's definitely a thing that how yeah, and how you can. I'm sorry, I'm really tired, so I'm doing a little rambling here. Where was I going with that? Just you just feel like you want to succeed, and if you care enough, and if the game draws you in, psychologically, you makes you want to. So it's a very interesting thing to think about there. Where how some games can draw you in more emotionally than others. I thought that's interesting. Uh, Next one is unexpectedness, like kind of a sense of surprise when you're playing a game, and obviously that surprise can come from like certain plot twists, like within the story where you're doing one thing and then it turns out you all of a sudden have to go and do another thing, or something else happens within the story that's just unexpected. For example, what happens to Eris in Final Fantasy VII, where that event occurs, and then all of a sudden, like, you're just thrown for a loop when it happens because of how just unexpected of how unexpected it is, and how much it changes the game as a whole. So it just comes from surprises like that can like keep players going. Like it's just like just kind of like a holy crap that just happened. I'll want to keep going and knows what happens next, going along with the flow in the story. Uh, Arousal, which yeah, that's what I thought the first time too when I read it, but it goes in more terms more in terms of saying like how it affects how the player perceives the abilities to perform in game, and just determining like going back to the caring about the outcome. Now, something like now, what I thought was an interesting Final Fantasy game that kind of put this in terms of like kind of combining like a story thing as well as a gameplay thing was in 8, where there was a kind of a reveal that happened. Some minor spoilers for those people who haven't played Final Fantasy VIII, although I know a lot of people don't like 8, so I'm not sure if anybody would care. There's a point in the story where it's revealed that to actually get your, for those who haven't played it, there's a system where in the game where you have to like a junctioning system where you have to junction guardian forces to, which are like summons basically, to your characters in order to get certain abilities. Like mechanically in game, but then it's also revealed that maybe doing that has the potential to damage memory, to where like to the point where like apparently most of the main characters, actually all of the main characters, I guess I should say mincing words here, were all in an orphanage and all knew each other as children at the beginning of like when they were very young. But then when they meet each other in game, it's like they're meeting themselves for the first time. So the implications of that, I think, are very interesting to think about. Whereas, like, this idea of, like, abilities affecting, like, the story in an interesting way. Where it's a necessary, despite it being a necessary game mechanic, the implications of that it's kind of fascinating to think about. I actually really liked that. And finally, we have local variables, which are the intensity of the type of emotion, which can range from anything from, like, thinking a character is really funny and, they're the funny character and you don't really want to see them die, or really in terms of, and if something bad happens to them, like, you feel like you can feel like, sadness when a character when something bad happens to a character and you can empathize with them, or you can feel anger when the main villain does something that you're just like, oh, I want to get you. Probably put it more kind of ironic that like that was kind of like a, but so really all of these variables can come together to form like an idea of like telling a story that you want to, of how emotionally invested you want to be in it. And if the game is doing a good enough job in telling its story, then it can continue on. And all of these apply to platformers too, where like it's that sense of accomplishment. Where, so really both types of games have like a thing of like that. It's almost like the story points in a Final Fantasy game are like levels in a platformer. As you can move on and continue to get to the next one. So really, in a way, they're kind of very similar in that, in kind of a interesting way. Like, that's really interesting to think about. But yeah. Anyways, this has gone on for another 11 minutes. I apologize for talking your ear off again. But anyways, have a good day, you guys. Bye.